Thank you, Professor Bembe. I hope that's your name. Oh, sorry, I didn't get it properly. Good morning, everyone. My name is Agatha Thu. I'm the County Executive in charge of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries in Nyandarua County. I'm also the Secretary to the Kenya County Executives in charge of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries. Some of them are also in charge of cooperatives. And I'm glad that I was invited to this forum to share county experiences on devolved agriculture. I'm told I have only 15 minutes, so I don't want to go into the details, but perhaps it suffices to say that before I became the county executive in charge of agriculture in Nyandarua County, I was also working in Nyandarua County. I have slightly more than 25 years of experience in extension service, in the public service, as a coordinator of the GIZ Farm Management Support Project, and 8 years as a county or the larger Nyandarua district coordinator for the CAPAP district service unit. That's where I left before I became the county executive in charge of agriculture. So when I talk about agriculture and small-scale agriculture in the counties, I think I have lived, particularly in Nyandarua, where I've worked most of my time with the small-scale farmers. So I've been asked to talk about improving agricultural performance under county governments, to look at challenges and experiences in the county. I think we are all aware here that in the year 2010, we signed a new constitution, and we all agreed that we devolve and take agriculture to the counties. And one of the objectives in the constitution, in Article 174 of the Constitution, Chapter 11, was to recognize the right of communities to manage their affairs and further their development, which is very important because we used to have a lot of complaints, particularly from some counties which felt that resources were not trickling down as they ought. The other one was to promote social and economic development and make services accessible throughout Kenya. And in Schedule 4 of the Constitution, I think that is where we devolved particular functions, especially in the Ministry of Agriculture. And in Schedule 4, Part 1, the national government was left, like the earlier presenter said, with policy. The Schedule 4 says agriculture policy, veterinary policy, and capacity building and technical assistance to the counties. Part 2, and that is what actually starts Part 2, was devolving of agricultural functions, most of the agricultural functions to the counties, which the Schedule 4 says agriculture, and that is including crop husbandry, livestock sale yards, crop, animal disease control, county abattoirs, and fisheries. Some people say that this is only what the counties were left to do. But I'm very happy because although the presenter said that, the Transition Authority has done a lot of work to unbundle these functions. And I think you can access a document from the Transition Authority on unbundling on functions, which is very detailed. And it's gone ahead to give counties functions which are actually stipulated in the Constitution. Agriculture is so broad. This was just a part of what was devolved, but the Transition Authority has done for us a lot of work so that every level of government can actually take care of its functions. In Article 6, Part 2, Article 6 of the Constitution, Part 2, it also says that the governments, the two levels of government are distinct. They are interdependent and conduct their mutual relations on the basis of consultation and cooperation. And Article 89, Part 2, allows for setting up of joint committees and joint authorities at the counties. I think that forms the basis of my presentation from the law. So I'll go straight to the opportunities and the challenges that we are facing as we. So on opportunities, I'll go straight to what we think have been opportunities on the devolving agriculture. And one of the opportunities we have found is taking services closer to the people. I think I'll be able to substantiate that. And we have seen also increased public participation, which is also a requirement in the preparation of what the presenter said as the county integrated development plans. When we came into office, one of the requirements was that the counties must form their CIDPs, without which they will not be able to access any resources from the national government. And CIDPs were stakeholder driven. I remember we visited every ward and interacted with a minimum of 100 stakeholders from that particular ward. And we were able to derive what we thought were the priority areas to invest in the next 5 years. I think you can see from my presentation there that the CIDP was actually a prerequisite, and we brought local leaders and stakeholders who were involved in planning. There is also a lot of public involvement in the budget making process. I think one of the strengths that we find is that the county budget cannot pass unless it has also gone through the hands of the stakeholders, and at one point it has to be taken back to the community so that they can be able to approve it or make alterations before it is finally passed by the county assemblies. Something else that we have also observed is that with the devolution there is enhanced farmer organizations. Farm organizations used to exist, but I think if I can give an example of our county, we've been able since the year 2013 to revive 15 agricultural cooperatives, which I think is very good because under small scale agriculture we just have to bring the farmers together for purposes of accessing service, inputs and markets. And with the revival, the county governments have I'm talking about Nyandarua and some of the counties that I'm also familiar with. We have been issuing farmers with milk coolers, milk dispensers where there is need, feed mills, provision of hay seeds through the cooperatives. And I think one of the other things is that there is increased livestock vaccines in the counties now. This is a devolved function, and from various counties, there is evidence that I think we are not even hearing about disease incidences. Initially we did. And one of the things I would want to say is that these 5 years have been quite difficult because they are the 5 years that the county governments were supposed to form institutions. I remember when my brother came to do the research in our county, our institutions were not even in place. Even the governor did not have some of the officers that are supposed to assist him at the governor's office. So we are continually forming constitutions, and as we speak today, some of the people reported as county directors in charge of agriculture, county directors in charge of livestock, are not even substantive directors in those counties. They are still staff seconded from the national government. So this is a period that counties are now creating their own institutions and placing officers where they ought to be placed. There was a requirement that we needed to form organizational structures first before they can be filled. Every county, however, is coming up with its own index on how to recruit. But I have also seen that most of the counties are recruiting from the officers who have also been working from within the county. And through the summit, the governors have also been advised to be able to tone down the wage bill to recruit from within other than from outside, which I think is a very good thing. Now, in terms of agricultural funding, I think we have been seeing it in the newspapers that the counties have been receiving roughly 15% of the GDP. And he has rightly mentioned that some of the counties have done good to increase agriculture, to increase funding in agriculture. I think one of the things that I can testify to is that there is more increased funding in the agriculture sector in the counties. if I compare what we used to get through the national government before devolution and what we are getting agriculture in Nyandarua today, I think I can testify that there is increased funding. And in some counties, particularly the ASAOs, there is more focused engagement with the partners. That one is evident, but most of the development partners are also found within the ASAOs. There is one thing that I have found, though, that perhaps needs to be addressed again. When I started working, the National Extension Project or program was being funded by the World Bank, and there was a lot of funding coming from the development partners. A period came when there was a window where there was no development partner that was funding extension service, and things just went down. And the officers in the districts were relying on the meager resources that they got from the national government, which was not adequate. And because I was there, I saw frustration in extension officers as they strived to provide service. Then came the National Extension Program by SIDA, and everything just went up. Officers' capacity building was enhanced. There was investment in the districts. And I think it is good that we agree here that the national government alone cannot support extension service. Extension service is very expensive. It requires that the officers are made mobile. They need a motorcycle. They need a vehicle. They need fuel. They need maintenance. It's just very expensive. And I think perhaps that is one of the reasons, because when the county governments came into office, NALEP was just phasing out, and therefore the government again had to take up extension service. And perhaps this also contributes to the reason why some of the officers feel that they are a little bit demoralized. Now, one of the other opportunities I've seen is the involvement of the county assemblies. The county assemblies created in the counties by the Constitution have the role of representing the people. They have the role of making registration and also oversight. And I really like the role of oversight, because somebody can tell you, hey, this is not happening properly. You promised to do this as a member of the executive and you have not done it in this particular ward. So there is involvement of elected leaders in budgets and budget approval and other issues in the county. Fiscal and implementation oversight, which is very important. I think you can hear that in the counties. The assemblies are impeaching county executive members, including the governor himself, which is good, because if somebody is not performing, we used to be supervised from the national government. Now there is more direct supervision from within, which is a good thing. There is decentralized staff performance audit, which is also very good, because somebody who is not performing and you are deployed in the ward, then it is very possible for the person who is providing oversight in that particular ward to know that you are not working. And we have had some very good experiences in the county. There is also development of county agricultural policies and laws at the county assembly, which I think is a good thing. Now, the other thing is focused investments in county priority agricultural value chains. I think one of the other strengths I've really seen is that the counties are focusing on what is important in their areas. For example, in my county, Nyandarua is known for potatoes and dairy. And we just have to put investments for farmers to be able to increase productivity and get inputs from there. And I think you have been hearing about potatoes in Nyandarua, because that is where farmers are making money in. And because of this, we've been able to procure technologies that are farmer-friendly, especially small-scale farmer-friendly. We've been able to mechanize potatoes for the first time, potato production for the first time in Nyandarua County. Now somebody can actually prepare land. You can spread fertilizer, you can plant potatoes, you can do disease control, and you can even harvest using machinery, which I think is a good thing. We've also been able to intervene in areas of seed. I know issues of seed are very controversial in this kind of setting, but we've been able to introduce seed that we think is important in Nyandarua County, and therefore there is increased incomes at farm level. The other one is, for example, in the area of dairy. For Nyandarua farmers to grow, we just have to do investments in dairy, and I think this devolution has given us an opportunity to do what we want. We've been able to procure milk coolers. We are working with some of the projects in the national government, like YAP, to be able to put up infrastructure that is going to help the farmers increase productivity. I think if I can just take you through some of our flagship projects in agriculture, for example, in Nyandarua, where I know better, dairy as a priority. We are working towards launching subsidized AI project. It is not launched yet, but it is going to be launched very soon. We procured everything that is required to be able to do this. And if we can bring down the cost of AI from between 12 to 1,500 and bring it to 700 for every farmer in Nyandarua County, I think this is a really good thing. The other flagship project that was developed at CIDP preparation was the Nyandarua people said, let's look at how we can break down the cost of fertilizer. And I think this has been taken up very well. And this particular year, 2015-2016, the county government of Nyandarua is investing 34 million shillings in development to bring down the cost of fertilizer, which I think if the national government releases these resources, then we'll go into the project, because that is already an approved budget. We also are looking at areas of milk processing, and we are working with the partners towards setting up a milk processing plant that belongs to the farmers, so that we can add value to the milk that is coming from Nyandarua County. On potato value chain, I don't need to mention again subsidized fertilizer. I don't need to do that. But perhaps to go with fertilizer, it is also necessary to mention that Nyandarua County is also making an investment worth 10 million towards a soil testing lab. It's already coming up. The innovations are going on. Equipment has been purchased, and we are just doing the final touches before we can launch that. The other one is trout farming. I think this is also good, and that is why devolution is important, because we can look at what is important in Nyandarua, trout farming. And along the Abadeas and the cold rivers that are flowing from Nyandarua, then we can promote a lot of fish farming. And towards this, Nyandarua has done investments worth 10 million so far towards development of 2 farms as hatcheries for trout in the county. He mentioned the revival of the pyrethrum industry, and again we are making investments towards reviving pyrethrum. But this one will also come in my challenges, because there is a challenge when it comes to reviving the pyrethrum industry. And he also said that counties are looking at what is very important, and perhaps forgetting the issues of food security. But I think it is also good to make sure that we develop as much as possible and exploit potentials within counties. And Nyandarua County being a horticultural county, one of the issues that has come up in the county integrated development plan is the possibility of putting up our own pack house. There is a lot of horticultural produce that is coming from Nyandarua for export, and even for the local market. And towards this, we are putting up a pack house with 100-ton cold storage facility for horticulture, and we are hoping that this is going to stimulate production markets for the small-scale farmers, which to me I think is a good thing. I think the other strength that I see in devolution is creation of inter-county trading blocks. I think you have been reading about them in the newspapers. And recently we started one in the central region for the eastern and central counties. And this year in the month of September, we had an agricultural trade fair with investors in Tharaka Nithi. The next one is supposed to be in Nyandarua. We are still planning for it, and I think it may not have gained a lot of popularity because it was the first one, and we hope that the next one is going to be even better. This is aimed at bringing investors in various agricultural products value chains together so that they can discuss what is important to them. They can also be able to exhibit what are their strengths. And I think as it grows, I see opportunity in counties deciding where do we want to put up the pack house as a block, and where do we want to put up a milk processing plant as a block. And I think this is something that should be encouraged. The other one that we saw that was very good was, for example, when Nyandarua and other potato growing counties, like I said, come together. And I remember at the beginning of this year was the first time that farmers in this country got the best prices since independence of potatoes, because a 50 kg bag of potatoes was going for 3,500 shillings. Now, when you compare that with what is the weight of an extended bag, which is about 250 kgs, it means the extended bag could well have gone for more than 15,000 shillings, which I think is a very good thing. However, we were taken to court, and therefore the process is a bit quiet now, but we hope to resume it very soon, especially when we are through with the court issues. And we also have an example of a trading block in Western Kenya. Now, let me just mention a few challenges, because I said I have only 15 minutes. 15 minutes? He's saying they are already over. So one of the things that we have seen is that we don't have very well-defined intergovernmental structure relations. We have an Intergovernmental Relations Act 2012 that stipulates creation of institutions that enable us to be able to communicate better with the national government. So we have structures, for example, in our State Department of Agriculture, we have structures. We have an intergovernmental secretariat, under which we have also created intergovernmental technical working groups, one of which is in charge of policy. And these intergovernmental technical groups are co-chaired by both the national and the county governments. We have 5 representatives from each. So when we are looking at issues of policy from the national government, then we sit together and discuss policy as a team. However, we need to strengthen these institutions, and they need to be funded so that they can share issues better. We have an intergovernmental technical working group, again, comprised of CECs and team from the national government that is in charge of food security, farm inputs, projects, monitoring and evaluation, and even communication, and under which counties have established what are the priority commodities within their areas. For example, potato commodity working group, pyrethrum, coffee, tea, and these are structures that we need to strengthen so that they can help us to operate seamlessly, especially where we have had issues. I think the other thing we must admit is that the top cream remained at the national government during devolution. I can see Madam Mary Kamau here with a lot of experience in agriculture, but they remained there. They didn't come to the counties. So there is need, like the Constitution says that the national government has to do a lot of capacity building. There is definitely a lot of need for the national government to support the counties in terms of developing legislation, which is a challenge to county executives. For example, I have to learn on my own how to make bills for agriculture. I think I need support. And it's even worse for somebody who has not been working in agriculture and has been appointed as CEC. I think we must agree here that there is serious need for capacity building of the county staff, not just the executive, technical staff, and not just technical, but even the county assemblies, because for them to be able to reason with us, then they need to understand what is the priority in agriculture. Other challenges is delayed disbursement of funds from the national government. That one has become a very serious issue, because when the counties want to move, there is no money. For example, at the close of the last financial year, we received money in July. And you know, in July, you can't spend money for the previous financial year, so you just take it back. So this needs to be improved. Something else that the counties also inherited was the wage bill, especially for seconded staff. Although we are saying that there is increased funding, for example, in my county, the wage bill is at 62% of whatever I get from the county government. Now that leaves only 38% for both recurrent and development. So again, this is a serious challenge, and that is why we need a lot of development partners support in delivery of extension service in the counties. He mentioned duplication of devolved functions by the national government through service units, for example, CAPAP, which is just closing doors, ESDSP. And I think it is good that we draw lines, because when the national government creates units in the counties to perform the same functions that are being performed by the counties, and sometimes they don't even have staff, they're using county government staff, I think there is a whole lot of confusion, and this one needs to be tackled at one time. It's a serious challenge. Sometimes you want the director, and the director has gone for an ESDSP function. I think it is creating a lot of confusion. But you know, the director is a human being. Sometimes you don't have a lunch to pay, and ESDSP has a lunch to pay. So we need to work through these issues to make sure that devolution takes place the way it ought. I have mentioned support to extension service by development partners, which has been reduced, but I hope that we can be able to move to where we were. I'm just concluding now. And then we also have challenges within the county. I just don't want to look at the national government and the county government. I think one of the challenges that you have seen, because you read it in the newspapers, is that sometimes there is a lot of changes. You know, CECs can also evolve to become politicians. And when you look like you're a politician and you're also interacting with the community so much, you can be changed so that you go to a docket that does not make you interact so much. There have been a lot of changes. Initially at recruitment, the requirement is that you had to be a professional in the docket. But the County Government Act also allows the governors to make changes within the executive. So you go sometimes and find that in the last 2 years, somebody was in charge of agriculture, a professional, and now the person at the top is an engineer in roads who is in charge of agriculture, and this is a challenge. Of course, the other one is that sometimes, like he said, in the budgetary making process, there is some bit of manipulation from the county assemblies. Every member of the county assembly also wants some project in their areas, and sometimes we find that kind of interference. We also have reduced allocation due to poor understanding of the central role of agriculture. I think we are all familiar with the Maputo Declaration and what should be allocated to agriculture, but sometimes it is not happening in the counties, like he said, because maybe perhaps in a particular county somebody doesn't understand the central role that agriculture plays in our economy and the development of that counties, and then lack of resources for funding mega projects. He mentioned irrigation. We are only able to put so little because we also realize that irrigation is very important. But irrigation projects are also very expensive. They are very expensive projects, and investing in these projects is just out of what the county governments can allocate. A mega dam in Nyandarua County will cost something like 9 billion. So if we wait for the county to invest in a mega dam in Nyandarua, that will be almost next to impossible. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is that I think we really need to work together, all of us. We need to accept devolution. One of the things that I personally say that it is the best thing that happened in this country, but we need to all work towards making sure that things happen right. I have come to the end of my presentation, and I thank you very much.
For the two have broken the MOU we had earlier on time. Okay, is promising to redeem it from the national level.
It is criminal to repeat what your colleagues have said. And so I don't want to be a criminal. And therefore, I'm going to spend roughly 10 minutes to summarize what I had to say. Because since programs and projects are somehow interchangeable both at national and county level. And so I'm going to give a brief on 5 areas. I'm going to mention about the projects. In fact, I should even just tell you rather than introduce you to what I'm about to say. There are 20 national projects in the ministry. And of course, when devolution came into play, so many changes occurred. First of all, the process became emotive. Emotive in the sense that what we used to do for the last 20 years, suddenly, we were restricted now to a few at the national headquarters. The Constitution itself, when read, and heuristically, in other words, the Constitution, the way the national and the county government have read it, it has been misinterpreted. And in most often, it is interpreted to suit individuals. And so when that happened, there are so many issues that now have emerged. And so when we started implementing our when we started implementing the 20 projects in the ministry, then the first thing that occurred to us was that the Constitution says that our work is now simply at the national level. And so, and then the county and the implementing institution. And so the 20 projects then, according to the ministry, is addressing 4 areas. Now, the first area that these projects are addressing is increase in agriculture production and productivity. And this entails strengthening research, technology development, transfer, promote access to inputs, and of course, reduce post-harvest losses and address effects of climate change. The other area that these projects and programs are focusing on are enhancement of national food and nutrition security. Of course, the national government has established a strategic food reserve and of course a trust fund to go with it. And currently we are also developing the National Crop Insurance Program that is now to enhance our food security. There's also improvement of market access and trade. So the projects are focusing on establishment of national commodity exchange and warehouse receipt system. And these are there to promote farmers, or especially the smallholder farmers' access to market and trade. Now, the other one is to strengthen institutional capacity. Now, we have institutional reforms, information communication management, data management, and monitoring and evaluation. Now, the most unfortunate thing about these programs is that they are developed at the national level, but the implementation is at the county level. And the reason is 90% of agriculture functions have been devolved. So you can see the challenge of managing these projects and programs, that the management is at the national level and implementation is at the county. And that one brings a lot of challenge. Now, what I wanted then to bring to your attention is the constitutional and legal basis for the transfer of these devolved functions and the implementation of agriculture. My colleagues have alluded to all these facts, but what I wanted to bring to your attention is the way we have interpreted the relationship between the county and the national government as far as project implementation is concerned. The question is our relationship vertical or is it horizontal, these two levels of government? In fact, there are so many interpretations about that relationship, and perhaps it will have to form part of our discussion because each has its own challenges. And of course, we needed a constitutional expert to tell us whether the arrangement is vertical or horizontal. Because if it is vertical, then the national government appears to be working through the county level government to be able to reach the farmers. And if it is horizontal, then each has a mandate to service our smallholders. So that will be part of our discussion. Now, I wanted to move very quickly to areas of national level government progress in key areas. Now, this one I'll do first of all in terms of institutional reform, and then secondly, I'll do it in terms of the legal and policy framework. Now, part of our work is to facilitate and create institutions to enable national government to deliver its mandate. We also need to support county governments in contributing towards attainment of national food and nutrition security. Some of the things we have done is that staff and equipment have been devolved based on the Transition Authority guidelines that was developed in August 2013. The ministry has also restructured itself to enhance service delivery. And then there are those frameworks that my colleagues have referred to for coordination between the national government, development partners, and the counties. The three coordinating frameworks which I can refer to now is the Agriculture Sector Intergovernmental Consultative Forum, which my colleagues have talked about. This is a coordinating institution. We also have the Transformation Initiative that has been established for sector-wide coordination. And of course, we have intergovernmental thematic working groups through which these projects and programs are being implemented. And now, the legal and policy framework. We have established the AFA Act 2013, and of course, we also established the rules and regulations to enable us implement our projects. In fact, AFA has taken the responsibility of implementing the Crops Act from the ministry to the AFA authority, meaning that the ministry now is a shell in the sense that if we are not able to implement the Crops Act, then we can as well go home, because that is essentially the mandate of the ministry. And that has called upon us to start seeing how this AFA Act could be amended. Now, the most unfortunate thing again that has happened is that fish has pulled off. So the AFA will be what this time? It will be AFA, because now fisheries have established the fisheries bill, and very soon fisheries will be on their own. So AFA will again be reconstituted. Now, the KALRO board has been established. KEPHIS Act is under implementation. And of course, the National Livestock Bill is being developed. It is ongoing. And the Warehouse Receipt System Bill, it has undergone two readings at the National Assembly. And of course, we know what warehouse receipt system will do to the smallholders. One, it will address the issues of post-harvest management, the post-harvest losses. It will then support the commodity exchange. And of course, it will also allow our smallholders to use the receipt as collaterals to be able to present to any financial institution. Now, the policy frameworks that we have is longer than this list, but all these are policies that are with us. Some require to be reviewed. Others actually need to be cascaded to the counties. Now, that process of cascading has met a lot of challenges. And because we've had some lack of champions to be able to do this. So all these policies are with us at the national government, and there is a need for us to start cascading all these policies. Now, all these challenges have been listed, and I don't have to talk about them. What I can mention about these challenges is the fact that the national staff, in fact, both national staff and even county staff, the process of devolution has really impacted on their job security. The other day, when just 4 days ago, and I'm glad some of my colleagues are here who witnessed that we had a meeting with MCS, and for 2 days we really had a rough time. One thing that this country must now realize is that the MCA is now the gatekeeper of our development agenda, because they are the ones that are at the interface between what we are providing and these smallholders. And so the MCA is a very, very, very important institution which must be addressed. But currently, there is serious issues with that institution. And so there's need then to address the MCA as far as smallholder agriculture is concerned. The other challenge, of course, I've just said the MCAs are a disaster. They are a disaster, but at the same time, they are the custodians of our county development agenda. I think
on this. Quickly, 1. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll limit to.
My name is Joyce Malinga from Calro. Thank you very much. I've been intrigued, actually. I want to ask the Secretary of Agricultural Committee. I have not heard from you or even from your fellow presenters anything on the role of NGOs. I note that NGOs control substantial amounts of money to support funding of activities, particularly for smallholders. In some places like Busia, and allow me to mention Busia and Chicago, for example, a lot of investment has gone into those areas through NGOs, but you don't see that impact. Allow me to say that, and please forgive me if you come from there, and forgive me if you are an NGO. I've been asking myself, nobody is appearing to supervise these NGOs. Nobody appears to direct where their money should go to, the area that money should go to, and no one appears to be studying the impacts of that are attained from that kind of funding. Is it important? Do we need to look at them? Is there room for the county governments to do something to tap into this important resource and even to direct development so that we can benefit from this money that is coming in? These are grants and somebody has to pay for them. Thank you. I'm sorry it's long.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mary Kamau. I'm supposed to chair the session, the next one, I think. Just wanted to mention maybe a few things, and especially on the issue of devolution. And I think the problem which has been there is that everything seems to have been taken in a haste, too fast. People didn't give it thought, maybe to be together and maybe decide on the way forward. But initially there was a lot of suspicion and resistance between the two levels, because each of them thought they are supposed to operate independently. The other issue I would like to say is that as for agriculture, we have developed most of the functions. Some of you are familiar with institutions that we had, like agriculture training centers, agriculture mechanization centers. We also had like e-extension we had started. All these have been devoted to the counties. And as Madam CEC Nyandaro was saying, we have an intergovernmental secretariat that's harmonizing us together, and we are working together. And I would like to say here that we are the best as far as the ministries which are not concerned. We have come with the ways of how we can work together for the common good of our farmers in this country. Thank you.
Thank you for the good comment.
My name is John Kamano from the University of Nairobi. Thank you for the enlightening presentations. And just like Dr. Okeya said, I cut across and saw a question that was there on Jagi has been answered. I'd just like to comment on Honorable Thuo's presentation and ask just two questions. Did devolution perhaps point to utilization of resources within the counties? I have in mind the Honorable CEC mentioning a budget of 10 million shillings to establish a soil testing lab, community or cooperative dairies, yet we have KCC in Ruru. Perhaps we could first of all use the wheels that we have before trying to invent new ones because of technical challenges. Thank you.
But due to the very many interesting issues, we had to drag on a bit. I think we have to start. Those who are still outside, please come so that we can be together. And this session I'm chairing is about agriculture service and innovations. And we have two presenters. And I would like to call each and every one of them. They are going to take at least about 15 minutes or so, and then we have a plenary. I would like to acknowledge the presence of the VC, who is not in the room at the moment, and all important guests, our stakeholders, our farmers, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, and we pray that we will have a very good session, because we are trying to see how we can transform this country by supporting our small-scale farmers, who are the farmers who form the bulk of the farming community and the providers of production, because we know 60% of our production actually is by small-scale farmers, who amount to about, or who count to about 5 million. So at this juncture, without wasting much time, I would like to call Madam Rosina Wanyama. She is going to give us a presentation on agriculture information services and their effect on farm productivity in Kenya. Welcome, Madam Rosina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my name is Rosina Wanyama. And on behalf of my co-authors, I would like to present some findings on a study we did on agricultural information sources and their effect on farm productivity in Kenya. I'll take us through the motivation of the study, some of the questions we sought to answer, the methods, results, and conclusions. For introduction, we want to say there's a growing need, demand for agricultural information in Kenya. And as most of the presenters have told us before, there's changing climatic conditions, technological development, and declining land for agriculture. So this drives farmers to require a wide variety of information as relates to the farming technologies that they may need under different climatic conditions, the modern technologies that they can use to utilize even with their declining land sizes to enhance productivity, weather-related information, and also market information for their product. And then for decades, agriculture extension, as we've seen from the earlier presentation, has been used as a tool for disseminating agricultural information to farmers. And our ASDS has recognized agriculture extension as a critical tool that is required to transform the subsistence farming into a modern commercial agriculture. But even with this, we've noted there is a prolonged underinvestment in agricultural extension services. And this is basically driven by the fact that during the late 90s, government scaled down its involvement in national economies. And as a result, we had a decrease in staffing and even facilitation of extension officers. And they also reduced funding for operations and maintenance. For instance, research shows that the current public frontline extension worker ratio to farmer is about 1 to 1,000, as opposed to the desired 1 to 400. This basically tells us that many farmers are therefore not able to be reached by this information. And in addition, earlier models where government was the main extension service provider proved to be unsuccessful and unsustainable. And therefore, even the current policy recognizes the pluralistic extension service that many actors are now in place, even to fill the gap that was created by the reduced involvement by the public extension. And as a result, we have a variety of actors ranging from the government themselves, NGOs, community-based organizations, farmer-based organizations, private services, among others. But even with these, still there is limited coverage of extension services across the country. So we sought to understand, to answer some of the questions as it relates to extension services, and 4 of the questions in this study that we tried to address. One, to what extent are farmers accessing agricultural information amidst these constraints? Then what are the sources of information available to them? And then are there factors that influence farmer preference of one extension service provider to another? And then is there some level of a difference in terms of productivity under the different information sources? So we used Tegemeo data, the 2014 wave, where a total of 6,512 households were interviewed, drawn from 38 counties across, out of the 47, and these come from the 6 main agroecological zones. In terms of methods, we used descriptive statistics to identify the extent of information access and some of the various agricultural information sources available. Then a multinomial logistic regression was used to determine factors that influence preference of different information sources. Then we used ANOVA to see if there is a significant difference in terms of productivity between the service providers. To our results, we found that out of the 6,512 households, about 21% of households are accessing agricultural information, meaning this is relatively low considering the number of smallholder farmers we have in the country. So something needs to be done here. So we went ahead to look at some of the characteristics of farmers who access extension and compare to those who did not access. And in terms of gender, we realized that majority of male-headed households accessing agricultural information compared to their female-headed households. And then there were significant differences also in terms of level of schooling, where those who accessed extension had higher level of schooling. They owned, they had allocated large sizes of land for cropping. They were located closer to roads, meaning they were more accessible. And then they were located closer to the extension service providers. Then in terms of income, we see that most of those households who access extension had higher levels of income compared to the other group. And even we went further to disaggregate the income components into crop, livestock, and off-farm, and we found that those who accessed extension had higher levels of crop and livestock income compared to those who did not access. So looking at the different sources of agricultural information available in Kenya, we found that there are a number of them, ranging from government agents, research organizations, NGOs, farm organization, community-based organization, other farmers, then input dealers, processing and marketing enterprise, and even private farms. So we categorize these extension service providers into three: first, public, and private. But we went further to categorize the private into two: those who seek to make profit, and then the non-profit making organizations. So for utilization, we found that despite the fact that government scaled down its involvement, public extension is still the most utilized by majority of the farmers we interviewed. And then private for profit are still the least utilized. So we also went further to look at some of the communication pathways that are utilized by these extension service providers. And we found that majority of them are using farm visit, which is still the more like a traditional mode of passing extension information. And considering the number of farmers who are accessing information, this could partly also explain why most of these farmers are not accessing extension. Because if we only have one extension farmer serving 1,000 farmers and using farm visit as the main communication pathway, meaning many farmers are left out. Then we went to compare information sources versus the communication pathways, and we found that private for-profit and public extension providers mostly utilize farm visit, but then non-profit service providers are utilizing group meetings as their main source of passing information. Then looking at their distribution across the income groups, we divided our farmers into according to their income, and then looking at this graph, you'll see that most of our service providers are kind of targeting the high income group. Yet we all know our smallholder farmers are majority are in the low-income group. So what happens to majority who are in the low-income group? Possibly because the decline in funding and facilitation of extension service providers could be that some farmers are offering maybe to facilitate extension service providers to come to their homes, making those who cannot afford such expenses not to access this information. And then we went further also to look at the factors that influence preference of agricultural information sources, and find controlling for other factors while comparing with the public information sources or public extension. We found that age of the farmer, older farmers prefer to use public extension compared to private sources. And then private non-profit group, farmers in a group are less likely to utilize information from private for-profit sources. And then also farmers with large land sizes are less likely to use private for-profit. If you look at some of the literature we have, you realize that most of these private for-profit will concentrate in areas where farmers have large land sizes. But this could be because most of the results here are contrary to that. And this could be because most of the farmers we interviewed are smallholder farmers with a mean of about 3.4 acres of land and allocating about 1.7 for cropping. And then also asset value has a significant effect because farmers who have at least higher value of asset are more likely to engage private for-profit service providers. And then looking at the productivity under the different extension service providers, we find that we looked at two enterprises, that is milk and maize, and we find that in both enterprises, private for-profit had a higher productivity, while private non-profit had the lowest. But then we went further to look at whether this was significant across the three groups. Now, under maize, you'll see that there's no significant difference whether the farmer is using public sources or private sources. But then looking at milk, there's a significant difference between private, for-profit, and public, where there's a difference of about 525 liters per cow per year. And also there's a significant difference between private non-profit and private for-profit. We see a difference of about 686 liters per cow per year. So what can we say about this? A relatively small proportion of farmers are accessing agricultural information. And if we need to transform our smallholder agriculture, then it means we need to invest more in extension services. Our keynote speaker also emphasized on this, that we need to increase funding in extension if we need to transform our smallholder agriculture. And then gender differential in access to extension is evident, yet we all recognize the vital role that women play in agriculture. So maybe we need to develop and disseminate gender-sensitive programs that can be reached by both households to enhance adoption of various technologies. And then over time, we have seen criticism of the inefficiency of the public extension system. But then this is dependent on the enterprise in question, because we saw under maize, there's no significant difference between the three service providers. But then when you look at milk, there's a significant difference. So maybe if we strengthen the coordination between the two, so that some service providers where they have a competitive advantage they can concentrate more on those enterprises. And then farm visit, as we see, are the most common pathway that are still being utilized. But these will limit the number of farmers that will be reached. If we can adopt appropriate dissemination channels, the current policy emphasizes on group approach. If we adopt this in combination with other dissemination channels, then we can be able to reach a large group of people. Then integration of ICT has also been emphasized in the current policy. In our data set, approximately 87% of farmers own mobile phones. Yet, only 1.4% were getting agricultural information through phones. Research has shown that in other countries, mobile phones have been used significantly to influence delivery of agricultural information. So the same we can adopt here in Kenya. And then also using platforms like the internet. The other year, government introduced e-extension. But this is, it is a good initiative, yes, but then there is need to capacity build both our farmers and the extension service providers. For instance, if we want to access this information through mobile phones, the kind of phones our farmers have in the village are not the same as what me and you have here. So you can still access internet, but then you cannot access the data in those rural areas. So maybe we need to custom the messages so that even those small phones can be able to access this information. And with those few remarks, I say thank you.
Thanks, Madam Rosina, for that very precise presentation. A very big clap for her. Thank you very much. I think maybe before we go to the next presenter, there are issues I wanted just to highlight, especially on the NASEP policy. We had a National Agriculture Extension Policy, which was enacted in 2012. And what we are saying, or the gist of the policy, was harmonization of the extension provision in the country, so that at least we can be more efficient and effective. Maybe we can remember in the SAPs of 80s, we found that extension and recruitment of staff was actually halted from 1986, up to around 2006. And you find because of staff attrition and retirements and all that, we find we had a shortfall of extension provision, especially in the public sector, and that's why we have maybe 1 staff to 1,000, and even in some areas is about 2,000 farmers. And you find when we were talking about the NASEP, it was supposed to have other providers of extension, private sector, NGOs, CBOs, research and others. But one thing we were supposed to ensure is that we have to have quality assurance. And in that policy we had a provision for a regulatory body which should be able to regulate the extension providers for quality assurance. Maybe of any other information or of importance is the number of staff that we devote to the counties. We had the staff we devote were about 4,000, the ones who are with the interface with the farmers. About 2,000 from the diploma colleges and about 1,000 from certificates. And with about 5 million farmers, small-scale farmers, you can see it's even more than that. And again, we are also doing some guidelines on extension so that we can be able to guide the counties on which approaches they can use in different areas. We are almost finalizing the guidelines which were done together with the counties, and maybe that is something of interest. The other thing of interest, as we consider Madam Wanyama's presentation, is that we have aging farmers, very aging farmers. Our farmers are now rate is about 60 years of age. These are farmers, when you even tell them of innovation, a lot of them, they're the ones who say, we used to plant with DAP 6, 13 and 614 maize variety is the best. You cannot change them. And you find that also the extension providers in the public sector, they are equally as old, because as I have mentioned, most of them were employed before 1986. So majority of them in the next 5 years, I think we are going to close doors, because most of the people will be retiring.
I'm not closing yet.
So these are some of the issues maybe we can report about as we think of the plenary. And then we know that As we mentioned about private extension in some areas is still a public good, and especially in Nason and other areas where we are still wooing the farmers for dissemination of good technology. I would like now to take this opportunity to welcome Madam Titiani, I hope I have mentioned her name right, Donde, who is supposed to give us a presentation on...
Good morning. My name is Titian Donde. I work for the Feed the Future Kenya Innovation Engine, and I'll start with a brief introduction on who the Kenya Innovation Engine is. The Innovation Engine is a USAID funded program, and we are being implemented under the Feed the Future strategy. The strategy for Kenya focuses on food security, undernutrition, and poverty. That is why it is the mandate of the Innovation Engine to identify innovations that are market-led, that address either food insecurity, undernutrition, and poverty. And once we identify them, then we have the obligation of fostering these innovations and bringing as many of them to scale as possible. We appreciate that achieving scales with innovation is one of the toughest roles there can be, especially in agriculture. So when you talk about scale, profitability, sustainability, and impact, all those are aspects of time. And that's why when we're implementing the program, we have phased our innovations into 3 main stages. The first stage is the stage that we call proof of concept. So we have the innovator, we have a good idea, and we have to make sure that the innovator and the idea work. The innovator knows what they're doing, and they look at the innovation as a business, and that the business itself can sustain, has the right structures that are needed when implementing innovations for agriculture. They then test the innovations, but on a very small scale, to just make sure that they function. Also, another thing we do when we are testing is to make sure that we are adhering to agricultural policies. If there are any approvals needed from people like KEFIS, PCPB, this is the stage that we bring them in so that we can start looking at certification issues. When innovations then graduate to the second stage, that stage allows them to pilot or roll out. And roll out increases the number of smallholders that they are servicing and also geographical regions under which the innovations are implemented. Then if they pass that stage, then they'd graduate into what we call scale. Throughout the journey with the innovators, we foster them on 2 angles. First, we bring on board professional consultants to handwork the innovators on aspects of business, systems, structures, business models. What do you need to do to make this innovation scale in the future? And then, of course, secondly, we do have a grant component that allows us to buy down risk. Remember, agricultural innovations take time. There are seasons, there are cycles, and there's cash involved along the process. So our grant component allows for buying down risk. So today I was asked to speak about why agriculture is not innovated in a big way. I think agriculture is thought about in a great way. Ideas on innovations are there in a big way. The challenge is implementing these innovations in a big way. From the Innovation Engine, over the last 3 years, we have had 4 solicitation waves and received 679 applications of innovations addressing agricultural services. But out of the 679, we are close to hosting only 20. So there's a missing middle, 679, 20. All of them were good ideas. Then why aren't we then innovating in a big way at implementation stage? One of the biggest reasons is because our innovations don't answer these 3 questions. Why, who, and how? And for each question mark, we have the ability of asking thousands of questions. Some of the things we ask innovators when they come on board is, why are you innovating? Is it a problem you've seen? Is it a challenge? Is it an opportunity? Who are you innovating for? And we have innovations that are meant for horticulture, and they're saying they're innovating for the horticultural industry with over 1 million smallholder farmers. But when you probe further, it's only for the fruit. And for fruit, we then narrow down to a particular fruit. So there's that misconception of, oh, my innovation is for agriculture, so anybody in agriculture in that sector will be able to adopt that innovation. Then how are you going to implement that innovation? What is your business model? How will you make sure that the farmers impact? So these are questions around agriculture innovations that are very sensitive and mostly overlooked. Then, of course, we have issues of policy, and I've had enough times this morning the mention of how policy is important. Sometimes our innovators forget to remember the policy component, so when you need to know, is there a policy in that sector? What does it say? Is it being enforced? What certifications, what approvals do I need over what period of time? Then you also issues around value chains. So you have innovations that target particular nodes of the value chain. And you go and sort out one point of the value chain. And remember, because it's a chain, you touch on this node, there's a reaction on the other. On the other side of that node, how will those people adjust to that innovation? A good example, we had a very good innovation that was being implemented for horticulture that would see smallholders weigh their produce at farm gate. So that resulted in the weight of horticulture at farm gate being higher than the bulker was used to, and therefore they were paying the farmer more. So what they did, they sabotaged the innovation because they were not prepared for that. The farmer was going to get more revenue, and the aggregator's business model did not allow for that. So when you're thinking about innovations, think about the value chain. Who plays in the other nodes? Who do you reach out to address the challenges, or even create an awareness further up or further down the value chain, other from the point at which you're implementing? Thirdly, one of the biggest challenges we've noticed, our innovators, most of them are very young tax, so they're innovators from Google. They download all kinds of research, they have all types of innovation, but they never ever go down to the smallholder level. So based on research, we have to experiment with these innovations. We need to modify them. We've seen innovations that work very well in Western Kenya, but when you take them to Eastern, they need to be tweaked. And all those need a lot of financial management and cash flow management from the innovator. Secondly, is also the issue of business growth. You have to run innovations for profit. There's no shortcut. Innovations can't be on charity. It can't be, there has to be some value that the smallholder is getting for it, and the innovator has to run it as a viable business. And of course, there's determination and focus from the innovators. I have an innovator who had a very good innovation for the potato value chain. And while we were going around the field, we were addressing issues around access to finance of smallholder. And we casually mentioned and said, you know, it's unfortunate that our interest rates are so high, because right now with microfinance institutions, we are doing about 20% flat, which results to 40% reducing balance on interest rate. And the innovator was shocked. And I thought he was shocked because how can a farmer be paying 40% per annum interest rate? But he was shocked because he then realized he was in the wrong business. So he stopped his innovation and quickly moved into microfinance. So that kind of focus needs to be there. You need to be there for the long haul and remain to what you're good at. So when we talk of innovations that hold great promise, I'm here to say all innovations in agriculture hold good promise, because in one way or another, they increase the income of the smallholder and they reduce poverty. But these innovations, as I said earlier, have to be well thought of. We house wonderful innovations. We have innovations that deal with the menace of a fruit fly in mangoes. Our farmers have been banned from international markets because, first of all, we had the fruit fly attacks, so they were banned. Then the farmers went and sprayed too many chemicals on the mangoes, and then we were banned because of our residue levels. So now we have a biological intervention that does not include spraying or anything, but it takes care of the fruit fly. We have innovations in the tomato value chain. We have an innovation that takes care, it's a trap, that takes care of the tuta absoluta, the moth that attacks tomatoes, and now farmers in Kericho are increasing their productivity by 80%. In Bomet, we have an innovation around the dairy value chain. The farmers were complaining, they were feeling shortchanged because they were very far from the bulking center. And they actually would have sworn that they would bulk 5 liters in the morning, but when they get their receipt from the bulking center, it would be 2.5, and there'd always be a story where it either spilled or you didn't measure well. So now we have an innovation that allows milk to be weighed within a 45-kilometer radius of the bulking centers. So we are not having, and immediately you weigh, it's on your phone, it's in the SACCO, it goes to your microinsurance, and we have farmers who are now enjoying paying school fees for their students in Nairobi because there's a Visa card section of it. So once you upload your credits, then your child can actually withdraw from an ATM and take care of the expenses here in Nairobi. So innovations don't have to be in a particular way. They are diverse and therefore diverse value chains. What we are saying is that any innovation in agriculture should first and foremost be desirable. It should be desirable for the consumer of that innovation. They must be willing to use it, and they must be willing to spend money on it. Secondly, it should be backed up by a visible technical innovation and an organization. By that I mean the innovation should be consistent and always do what it is supposed to do to the highest level, and an organization structure that supports the innovation. We like starting companies where everybody's the MD, the CEO, the manager of this, but in agriculture, I think there can only be a CEO. Everybody else has to get their hands dirty. So even making people appreciate that the structure is more flat, more foot soldiers when you're dealing with innovations is a new concept for many, because they all want to sit in Nairobi, develop innovations, and expect them to work at the field level. Then, of course, it has to be financially viable. You have to have a revenue model that allows you to interact with smallholders. Smallholders will rarely want to pay you upfront for any innovation. So you have something that increases their productivity. It costs them about 3,000. Where would a smallholder get 3,000 to pay you before they even plant? So you have to think about your business model and your revenue model. Lastly, I'd just like to say, for any innovation to be diffused, there's no shortcut. We have to create awareness, and we have to build knowledge across that value chain. Then we have to sell our value proposition. I've been in very many forums with smallholders, and most of them say, as long as it creates value for me, I'm willing to pay for it. But we assume smallholders will take what we give them. It has to create value. And they have cited things that they've been able to adopt because they created value. They might struggle to pay for it, but they are willing and will be able over a period of time to pay for it. And only after we create awareness and sell our value proposition, then is when we'll have adoption in agriculture innovations and actually increase our productivity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? You have to think of the business growth. Because you're not doing charity work, you have to make sure that at least you have to have funds of financing. And also think about the value chain. As she has likely said, that if you interfere with one, or if you trigger one part of the chain, maybe you might not get the value for it, but you have to move along the value chain. And maybe before we even do the innovation, we have to think of other issues, and especially on the marketing of the produce. You can do so many or give technology, but if you don't have a market for the produce, the farmers will not be interested. So that has to be demand driven by the farmers on the farms. And then we have to test the innovation. We have to pilot it before we upscale it, and maybe involve even other providers or other people who are of interest along the value chain. And at this junction, I would like to say that we had actually tried to do some kind of innovation in extension. As I mentioned about the old farmers, we are trying to bring youth in agriculture. And that's why we started programs like the National Agriculture Information System, where we are using mobile phones to be able to dispatch technology to the farmers. And we also started or launched e-extension in year 2013 before we moved to the counties. And we bought laptops, these laptops, about 600 and more. And all what we wanted to see is that information gets to the farmers, because we didn't have enough staff. So we were looking at how we can use other methodologies so that we can be able to reach the farmers. Another methodologies is about group approach, where we have farmers of maybe CIGs, common interest groups, coming together and learning from each other, and having different extension providers coming together, sharing knowledge and experiences. And I think with that, I would like to open the floor for comments, questions, and we have about 5 minutes to do that. I would like to start number 1, number 2. Where is number 3? Number 3. Remember your number, won't call. And in number 4.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Gerard Masila from the Eastern Africa Grain Council, EAGC. Interesting presentations, one on the information and the other one on innovation. Very close terms, information and innovation. Few comments. We also actually offer information services. If you go to your web and you do www.ratin.net, you would find quite a lot of information that we offer, especially on price, cross-border trade, and several other things out there. So to the presenters, the first question or comment is information equals to extension? Are the two the same thing? In my view, I don't think extension is equal to information. I think we need to have clarity on that. Second comment, still on the information presentation, it told us that the public sources are the leading in offering extension. To the best of our knowledge, there is no public extension. It died long ago. There is no budget. I think we had that earlier on. And we know that we are also in the field, like we are there every other day. I don't remember when I last met a public extension officer out in the field. So how is it that public extension is leading in this research? So I am lost there. And the other one is to do with the recommendations. I want to support the idea that group and addressing group and group extension is indeed the way to go. As a way of getting to do it, as your research paper has shown. And also in your research, you told us that out of the panel of the people you asked questions, I think 80 or 90 or maybe 100% were all smallholders. So I don't think you were able to ask the medium level, the large scale people, where do they get the information from, and how does that interface. Lastly, on the innovation, from the innovation engine, the Feed the Future. I think our comment, especially those of us from private sector who probably were part of those who provided the 676 ideas that you only got 20 to work with. Our feedback to is that perhaps the way you structure your process of identifying these innovations and handworking these innovators is something that needs to be relooked at in terms of where exactly is the need and how can you help them. In your last slide, you actually put up point number 1, which was creating awareness and knowledge. And indeed, that is where your biggest challenge comes, because it's very expensive to create awareness, to do advertising, to give the knowledge out there. And it's one of the areas that are very big bottleneck. Thank you very much.
Comment. Before we think of innovating, we make the maximum use of what is out there. I was meant to understand yesterday there are so many innovations out there which are not known by the farmers because of the lack of extension services, or the farmers themselves cannot afford them. And that gets me to my second question is, are some of these innovations public goods or private goods? Because here we are talking of smaller farmers who don't even have the income in the first place. And then to Rosina, I would want to know whether the smaller farmers, that person who is controlling less than 1 hectare, whether he's accessing extension services or not.
Your name, please.
Thank you very much. My question is to the chair of the session, not the main presenters.
my understanding of agricultural information is that data management falls there. And do we in the country have a common hub for collecting, processing, and disseminating agriculture data for planning and for impact analysis? If we have, do we collect in a professional way the data? Do we do actual measurements? Thank you.
My name is Hagai Leonard Odori from Future Agriculture's Consortium. I want to raise two questions. The first one is on incentives in the extension system. And addressing Madam Chair and the USAID on innovation engines. I don't see much discussion on how we can structure the incentives for extension workers to drive innovations for smallholder farmers. There was an initiative in 1997 to allow the Ministry of Agriculture to deploy people with PhDs and masters to divisional level. But then there was a lot of resistance at the national level, and they sabotaged that structuring of the ministry, which was sponsored by the World Bank. Now, as if you look at the comparison that Madam Wanyama has done, apparently the arguments on whether public or private for-profit extension is more effective or not do not seem to address the whole question of incentives. And the second issue, again, I hope that now that Madam Chair, you say most of the staff are soon retiring, there is an issue about attitudes in the civil service and in the whole country. Then there is a question of power relations. You had earlier on Dr. Keo raising the question of whether there is a horizontal or a vertical relationship between national and county level governments. Many times people have suggested that you can have somebody at as a frontline extension worker earning as much money as the director at the national level if his performance warrants it. But I think that those of us who are in this room and have been managers of the system have not been willing to accept this. Are you now ready to accept the change as you hand over the reins to the new people who will be coming in after we retire in the 5 years? And we have a new system that accepts that we can do away with the diploma disease, giving people positions because of the many papers they have read and written, and yet they cannot implement our policies effectively. But rather that we reward those who are able to transform our smallholder farmers. Thank you.
I agree with you to an extent, because at the end of our solicitation waves, we actually realized that we had more stage 1 innovations than larger innovations. And I think that happened because of the rigorous process that is involved. And in the process, we lost some big players who didn't have time to tick the nitty-gritty buttons at the time that was required to go through the process. So we actually looked into that. When we talk of creating awareness, and that's a battle we are also having with our innovators, because we cannot create awareness by walking from one farmer to another. But yet, when we go to places, especially where smallholders are, we have the days where almost every development agency is meeting smallholders in a certain center. And there's so many smallholders in the same place, but in very small meetings, and they're divided. We're actually asking our innovators to start tapping into those forums. We're also telling them they do not have to target a farmer one by one, but they can go to where farmers like aggregators, bulkers, talk to the larger person so that the innovator can scale down to the smaller group without you having to sell your proposition house to house.
On the second question of there have been innovations out there, I can never agree more with that statement. It's true, but the challenge is, first of all, we go back to, are even the smallholders aware of it? But more importantly, when those innovations were being developed, who were they being developed for? We've seen innovations directed to smallholders, and the smallholder does not think they have a problem there. We had somebody trying to sell, this was about 6 years ago, he was trying to introduce the shop cutters to the farmers, and he was telling them, you know what, if you buy this machine, it will save you time. And when we did our focus group discussions, the farmers did not like that idea. Why? Because that's the activity that used to keep them busy. And their question was, if I do what I normally do with 3 hours in 30 minutes, then what will I do with the rest of my day? So these are things you need to think about when you do not look at something and recognize the problem and then say, I have this solution for you. Talk to the smallholders, because you'll still sell that same item, but you'll change the value proposition. And that's the skill about innovation. So there are many out there, maybe there's no awareness, but maybe also they're solving problems that are not considered problems for the target market that innovation is meant for. When we talk of our farmers not being able to purchase, I forever and ever argue with that fact. Our farmers have money, our farmers can purchase whatever we sell to them. We just have to think about our revenue model. As I said, do not ask smallholders for money upright. Let it be part. If all innovations in agriculture lead to one thing, increase productivity. As Madam Director has said, if you increase productivity and you have a ready market, then we've increased the income of the smallholder. So there's no smallholder who will not have money to purchase anything. And that's a perception we go around with. And even we have forums, of course, all smallholders are poor. And I met a guy in Eldoret, and he told me, you know, people came here to buy chili, and they said they were shocked that I have an acre of chili and I'm not selling, and they called me poor. And he told me, young girl, I am not poor. That house, and he showed me a Mabati house about an acre away, said, that's my last born, she's married. I have a wife, I have 2 cows. I do not need to sell chili, I do not need any more money. My work on this earth is done, my children are married, my wife has 2 cows, we have milk, we are fine. So this perception that there's no money and there's poverty is also then the state of mind, and we need to actually weed our smallholders out of it. And lastly, I think about incentives. I think we've tried to work with extension workers, but as we've said, also the extension services are not fully out there. They are few, they are scarce, and so if we can get extension services actually running, it would be one good way of us scaling innovation. But we don't mind having a level of incentive to there, but that system of extension services needs to be working so that it's a rollout platform for the innovation.
Thank you, Dodi. Now I give a chance to Rosina.
Thank you. My first comment goes to Mr. Gerald. Thank you. I know Bratin, and I've visited that site frequently, and I like the kind of information you post there. That is information. The procedure, just passing that information to me or any other farmer out there, that is a form of extension. Using extension to pass this information to farmers. Okay. And then someone asked where, okay, you said that public extension died long ago. That it's reduced, but it hasn't died. We have somebody coordinating that. And when a Calro officer goes out there to show a farmer how to cultivate orange-fleshed potatoes, that is an extension officer doing that. That is information from public sources. So I tend to differ slightly. Maybe the concentration of other private service providers is more out there. But then according to our farmers, majority of those we interviewed, they say they get information from public systems. And then my other question goes to Dr. Muyanga. You asked if the smallholder farmers with less than 0.25 acres are accessing information. Okay, generally we say just a relatively low proportion are accessing this information, but we can go further in our data and disaggregate by land size and see what proportion are accessing this information. That is a good area for further research. Thank you.
Oh, thank you all for those comments and answers by our 2 presenters. I think there was a question by Madam Rose on agriculture information, data processing and correction. We still have that, but it was a bit disrupted when we moved it to the counties, because the officers of the counties are not directly to the ministry. They don't report directly to the national government, but we are looking at ways of reviving that, where we can have information and data from the counties and the national government being harmonized. We have addressed the issue through the intergovernmental thematic working group, where we have the county government and the national government representative doing the same. So soon we will have a streamlined extension service or data correction for the two. On the issue of incentives to the extension workers, as we had in the morning, extension is now devolved to the counties, and each county is supposed to look at the ways on how they can be able to provide or facilitate their extension workers so that they can be able to reach the farmers. Somebody like once extension is dead, it was not dead when I developed it, maybe it is dead now. But what we know is that the issue of extension is not just an easy thing. You see, you are dealing with the farmers. You can give innovation, you can give messages out there. Like somebody asked, does extension equal to information? You can give as much as you can, but can farmers implement? If I tell a farmer today, plant with fertilizer, and then he doesn't plant, whom do you ask? Because maybe he doesn't have the money. There are so many other exogenous factors. So it is, I can say it's a public good in most of the cases, and it's not equals to you give a service and you get maybe a return for it immediate. It may not be seen immediately. But what I can say is that I've given an analogy of where we were in 1986. If you look at the extension from maybe post-independence, you find that everything was very well streamlined after post-independence. This is the time we had so many boards which were marketing our produce. We had a KFA which was giving the inputs. We had an ADC which was multiplying animals. The farmers were assured once you get your maize, you take it to NCPB, you get your money on cash. But what happened when we did liberalization in the 90s? All these structures were no longer working because most of them they died. And that's why the lane started beating us in most of the issues. Because we are saying if you don't have a market for any produce, there is no amount of extension that you can give to the farmer which he will even see the output. And then you find allowed post-independence, we were financing agriculture that's 13% of our GDP. Today we have what? 3%. And we have always been saying, can we invest in extension? Because extension is a very expensive affair, and that's why you find in most of the countries and in Africa, it was being undertaken by the government. Because we have vehicles, we have officers, we have what. So if you don't invest in them, you can pay them the salaries and they stay in the offices. I think we had in the morning 2 CDAs here, mentioning that at the moment, they are not facilitated to do the work. So there is nothing much they can do if you don't facilitate them. And we were told here by Madam Agatha that 60% of her allocation is for the whatever, the salaries and whatever. And you don't provide them with facilities, no vehicles, there is nothing much they can do. Let's invest in extension and let's harmonize what we have
in extension. We have tried, now that we have even devolution, where we are having policies at the headquarters and counties, the implementers, and you would be surprised that even the policies that we had done initially before 2010 and before 2013, we have to redo them again, because we have to align them to the current situation or the current dispensation. And actually that's what we are saying, that we have an intergovernmental secretariat where we are trying to see where we can work with the counties so that at least we can fast track most of these things. But all what we can say is that there is still room to improve if we can be able to think about the extension on the ground and harmonize it so that we can have other players in the market or in the provision, because that's what the NASEP policy was saying. But we should not compromise on the quality of what our farmers get. And I think with that, I think I'll forward back to the main chair, what our farmers, we all can do it, and that's why we have to harmonize and support pluralism for our farmers and for our stakeholders. Thank you very much, and God bless.
I want to invite the chair, Professor Kosura from the University of Nairobi. And
my name is Willis Ogot Kosura from the University of Nairobi. And first of all, I want to thank Tegemeo for inviting me to participate in this important conference, and specifically to chair this session on monitoring, learning and evaluation. I should start by saying that no country in the world has developed without transforming its agriculture sector first. And in the case of Kenya, it is even more important to transform the smallholder sector, because that's where the bulk of the productive activities take place. So transformation process is very important, and the three themes which are associated in this conference, that of climate change, devolution, and land constraints are equally important, because each one of them must be tracked towards achieving development. So it is very important that we do careful monitoring and evaluation, and this session is going to handle that. I realize that we are well past time, and we are going to give the presenter, Maria Nankia, to give us her presentation within 15 minutes. The less, the better, so that we have more time in discussing this important issue. And therefore, we shall give Maria only up to 15 minutes or less, and then probably we shall have, say, 10 minutes of discussion, plenary discussion, before we end. Because time is of essence. We are very well past time. So let me take this opportunity to invite Maria to give her presentation, and the topic being MLE in the agricultural sector, role of Tegemeo Institute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My name is Maria Grace Nancha, and I'll be taking you through monitoring, learning, and evaluation in the agricultural sector, and then the role of Tegemeo Institute. Looking at our outline, I'll be sharing what MLE means. Then I'll look at the emergence of MLE in the agricultural sector. Then I'll share with you the MLE conceptual framework, the importance of MLE in the agricultural sector, and then the relevance of Tegemeo Institute. What is MLE? MLE is made up of monitoring, learning, and evaluation. Looking at monitoring, it is the systematic and continuous collection, analysis, and use of information for the purposes of managing, controlling, and decision-making for specific projects or programs. The learning component looks at the continuous process of gathering key lessons. Those are both positive and negative, from monitoring and implementation of the project interventions for further knowledge consumption and informing of subsequent actions. And lastly, evaluation is the systematic and objective assessment of project interventions in terms of impact, efficiency, effectiveness, relevance, and sustainability. Now, looking at the emergence of ML in the agriculture sector, looking back in the 1970s, the subject was treated as a traditional function, and it was purely project-based, and it looked at, its main focus was on monitoring of inputs and outputs. Later on, we see it expanding from project level to program level. We see it going up to the sectoral level, where we see the ministries taking it up, and they're overseeing the M&E function that is being taken under the project level. Later on, we see the emergence of the participatory approaches, where we see the different beneficiaries being really key in coming up with solutions to their own problems, and then that definitely required better data and tools. Then there was the emergence of the result-based management that was really focusing on the measuring of results. Then we have the new millennium, that is in the 2000s, where MLE becomes a key agent of agricultural development, and it's not just focusing on policymakers, donors, and planners, but then there's also a concern for the beneficiaries and the members of the public, and we see it becoming a tool for promoting good governance and accountability. We see increased demand for value for money, accountability, efficiency, and results demonstration. And then finally, we had the emergence of the Millennium Development Goals that have just been evaluated. And this year, we had the enactment of the Sustainable Development Goals. And all this has really contributed to the impetus and motivation, and then the drive for MLE as a function. Now, I want to share with you a conceptual framework that goes ahead to show how these three components of monitoring, learning, and evaluation are interrelated. And I will try to relate this with project cycle management. If any project is being initiated, we all know that we start with the MLE systems design. That is on the first box that looks at the developing of theories of change. That is where we visualize the ideal pathway of how we want that project to go, and we look at the assumptions and the milestones and all those projections that we want to put together into this project. That is a stage where we also get to ask the key evaluation questions. For instance, how come project A is working in place X and not in place Y, yet these two places are receiving the same kind of resources? Then we move into developing the MLE framework, where we look at describing the particular indicators that we've identified in the first phase. We go ahead to describe them in detail, and we go ahead to describe frequency of the data collection that will be tagged onto these indicators, and also assigning responsibility centers of who will be able to collect these indicators. So those first two boxes explain the MLE systems design. Then we definitely go into developing the data tools that we shall use to capture the information that we shall be using. And then we go into the actual tracking of the progress of the different projects that we are going to implement. And all those four boxes try to explain the process of monitoring. Then we go into the final stage of evaluation. That is where we are able to make sense out of the data that we've collected. We go ahead to analyze it and be able to generate different knowledge products that we're going to use for learning. You can also note that learning cuts across the two processes of monitoring and evaluation. It can actually start right from the process of monitoring, and then it can go all the way up to the end of evaluation. And under evaluation, we can do that right from the project start. That is where we can do the baseline surveys. And then towards the midway, where we can do the midline survey, and then the end line survey. Now, having looked at the conceptual framework of MLE, we go into looking at the importance of MLE in the agriculture sector. I would want to point out that this is used for new project identification, programming, and rollout, like I've explained in the conceptual framework. 2 is that MLE has become the heart of managing impact. If we are to talk about adoption levels of the smallholder farmers that we are working with, and we want to measure key components like change in knowledge, attitudes, and practices, we have to do that with MLE. Then it also helps us to track our performance to see if the different projects that we are running are going as per plan, and in case we are moving astray, corrective action can then be taken. Then MLE is also used for effective decision making and resource allocation. You'll all agree with me that the resources, especially in the agricultural sector, are always scarce, and for us to be able to manage them efficiently, we need the MLE results. It also helps us to answer the other key questions that are related to relevance, effectiveness, efficiency, impact, and sustainability. MLE is also used as a basis for accountability and reporting. Throughout the funders, there's need every other day for answerability of every penny and of every dollar that is being spent on the different agricultural projects. It also helps us to track agricultural sector performance. We all know that the agricultural sector is divided into crops, livestock, fisheries, and forestry. So all these are in a way unique and different. And if we are to track performance and design customed made interventions, we really do need MLE. If we are to also address the other country-specific performance, basing on the fact that all countries have different constraints in agricultural development, it is only the MLE results that we can use to be able to inform design of country-specific interventions for agricultural development. It is also a basis for supporting policy dialogue and debate. That is the use of MLE reports to provide evidence-based policy implications and recommendations. It also supports in raising stakeholder awareness and identifying stakeholder contribution and participation, where each stakeholder is aware of what it is that they are going to contribute in the execution of a particular project. Lastly, it is used as a basis for learning, not only for staff and management, but then also for the smallholders that we are working with. Now, the recent study that has just been carried out in Kenya goes ahead to affirm the importance that I've just shared in my previous slides. And like I explained in the evolution of MLE in the agriculture sector, you see that all organizations right now are focusing on collecting and using indicators across the full log framework matrix. That is from the output level, looking at the input indicators, the outcome indicators, the intermediary outcome indicators up to the impact level. And this other side goes ahead to show you the different uses that I've mentioned in my previous slides. Now, what is the relevance of Tegemeo Institute in MLE in the agriculture sector? We have been doing quite a number of works in the past, and we still continue to do this in terms of MLE. And part of this includes impact evaluation, that is both experimental and quasi-experimental, external evaluations, monitoring and tracking changes in key indicators, and then baseline studies. Looking at each of these specifically, I thought it would be good for me to share with you some of the specific examples of the works that we've done in the past. And under this, we've developed a 13-year panel data set on rural households for the years you can see in the presentation. And data collection has gone ahead to cover 1,540 households over the agroecological zones, covering 24 districts and 9 agro-regional zones in Kenya. In 2014, we were able to start a new panel on rural households to continue the work of monitoring the trends of the key indicators that were in the first set of the panel data set. Then under TEPRA 1, we've gone ahead to monitor the trends in urban consumption and expenditure patterns for high-value crops, beef, dairy, and consumption of stable food crops. We also do support programs and projects that are being done by development agencies, and under that, we are monitoring and tracking changes in outcomes under the agriculture sector for USAID Feed the Future initiative. We've also monitored key indicators for USAID supported programs in the agriculture sector under the Strategic Objective 7. And then also in collaboration with Michigan State University, we're evaluating the impact of the USAID supported programs using quasi-experimental approaches. And evaluations using experimental approaches, we currently have an ongoing project in Uganda that is evaluating the impact of seed promotion, and we are doing this in partnership with 2 universities, that is Makerere University from Uganda and then Wageningen University of Netherlands. Then in collaboration with UC Davis, we are carrying out a field experiment to evaluate the uptake of new technology for maize production in the mid-altitude areas of Kenya. Under impact ex post, we evaluated the impact of coffee certification initiative on Kenyan smallholder coffee farmers. And the other example is external evaluation of the Great Lakes Cassava Initiative in Tanzania and Rwanda. Those are some of the examples we do have under baseline studies. There's a gender desegregated baseline survey under the CAPAP project. Then there's another one for the Kenyan Agricultural Productivity Program that was in 2006. And then we also designed the baseline study for AGRA and harmonized the instruments for use in 13 countries. Then we've also worked on the Rockefeller Foundation baseline for their interventions in Western Kenya. Those are some of the other examples under baseline studies. We designed and coordinated a baseline for the Coffee Initiative Program in Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda. And then for the World Economic Forum, under the Business Alliance Against Chronic Hunger, there was a baseline for monitoring farm level and business level interventions in 2008. Now, these are some of the clients and partners of the Institute that I've already mentioned in some of our examples. We see government there, AGRA, USAID, 3IA, and then the Rockefeller Foundation. Now, with the increasing and a growing demand of MLE services, the Institute was proactive enough to establish the MLE unit. And with this, we are aiming at strengthening Tegemewa as an institute to be able to become an important regional hub for MLE service provision. How are we going to do this? We look at having a team to lead in delivery of MLE assignments. Definitely we can't do this alone. We are looking at having contribution, first of all, from our current team that we do have, and then also getting external expertise. We can look at things like outsourcing. We are looking at institutions and academic and research. For instance, the Agriculture Economic Department of Egerton University. We are looking at professional bodies like the Evaluation Society of Kenya, and then also the other regional partners that I mentioned earlier on, like Makerere University in Uganda. Talking about the MLE unit, currently we are looking at trying to lay strategy on how we can satisfy and meet the high and ever-increasing demand for MLE services, and we are upping our game in terms of being more relevant, efficient, and providing of quality services. Right now, we are in the process of re-evaluating and redesigning an efficient business model and processes that will help us to improve our service delivery in terms of MLE. We are also looking at enhancing our capacities in MLE, and we are looking at having a dedicated team to be able to provide these services like I've mentioned earlier on, and then also being able to build strategic partnerships in the region that we can be able to work with, and then also appreciating the role of ICT, where we shall be able to adopt ICT-based MLE, where we shall use innovative and cutting-edge technology in our work to be more efficient. I've decided to bring this back just to mention that in our past works, we've been focusing more on the MLE implementation support, but now, as I've mentioned, we want to further build our capacities in trying to be able to provide MLE services under the MLE systems design. That is at the very start of designing the project for us to be able to comfortably go into developing theories of change and development of the MLE frameworks. What is our plan going forward? We look at leveraging on the analytical capacities and good time and the good name in policy research of the institute that is already in existence. And then we also want to strengthen the institute's support to agricultural development by identifying the interventions and policies or the development approaches which will deliver better results and outcomes and ultimately change lives. As I conclude my presentation, I just want to share the power of measuring results and what it can do for us as the implementers, what it can mean for our different organizations, and what it can do for the smallholder farmers that we are working with, our country and Africa as a whole. One is that if you do not measure results, you cannot tell success from failure. If you cannot see success, you cannot reward it. If you cannot reward success, you are probably rewarding failure. If you cannot see success, you cannot learn from it. If you cannot recognize failure, you cannot correct it. And if you can demonstrate results, you can be able to win public support. Thank you.